Carlos, thank you so much for joining CNBC.
You're welcome.
An international arrest warrant has been issued for you by the French government. You'd said in the past that you would be willing to work with the French justice system. Would you be willing to stand trial in France?
Yeah. Well, first I did work with the French justice system because, as you know, an investigating judge with the prosecutor came to Lebanon, and on a voluntary base, I accepted to be interrogated.
This was June of last year.
Yeah, this took place in June last year, in front, obviously, of the Lebanese prosecutors. They spent 3 days here, asked me tons of questions, answered everything I could, and then they left. After this, they issue a convocation to be present in France in December, knowing that I have a red notice from Interpol requested by Japan, and that the Lebanese authorities took my passport and forbid me to leave the country. So they knew I could not leave. That means that leaving the country would require a cooperation between the French authorities and the Lebanese authorities.
Did this come as a surprise to you, this arrest warrant?
No, it didn't come as a surprise because I knew, because they wanted in a certain way to close the investigation file and to move to the justice system, to the French justice system, they needed a step which is called mise en examen in French, that required for me to be on French soil. They could not make a mise en examen if you are outside France. So the only way to pursue that the investigation end up with the next step, they had to issue a warrant, okay, an arrest warrant. What surprised me is not the arrest warrant. I knew that it was coming unless they abandoned the pursuit. What surprised me is the fact that I learned about it by reading an American newspaper. I was supposed to learn first, or my lawyers learned first about it. They didn't do that. And second, the timing.
Yeah, the French elections. We're just days away from a vote.
You do it on a Friday before a major election. This all seems a little bit surprising to me. But the step, which is a natural process by which you're going to continue after you close the investigation, allow me to access the file, because so far I did not access the file. What I know about the file are through the questions they asked me when they came in June.
And you're talking about the charges themselves.
The charges, and all the rumors and the leaks in the press, even though, in France, the investigation is supposed to be secret.
Right.
Okay? Which obviously is only secret for those who believe in secrecy, but not secret for the prosecutor and the investigating judge, because he's leaking. And even the Wall Street said, after interview with the instructing judge, we learned that there is an arrest warrant. That's what surprised me.
So they're leaking things to the press. It's supposed to be a closed investigation. Do you still believe you would have a fair trial in France?
I think so, because I think in France, contrary to Japan, you're innocent until proven guilty. Okay? Even though, I would say the gesture, the physical attitude is, he seems to be guilty. But at least the system respects that. And on top of this, France respects the human rights, which frankly was not the case in Japan, both in terms of respect of human rights, and both in terms, as you know, in Japan, you're guilty and you have to prove yourself innocent.
Yeah.
What surprised me in all of this, that the main accusation in the file, from everything, from the questions of the investigating judge and from the leaks from the press, are related to the Omani situation, where I'm accused of colluding with the distributor in Oman to enriching myself. That's the main accusation. But I said clearly, there is not one single euro from Renault, not one single yen from Nissan coming to me as a person in enrichment. I said it and I can prove it. Except the fact that all these accusations about Oman came from the Japanese prosecutor, who, instead of transmitting the file after I left Japan to the Lebanese authority, because I'm a Lebanese citizen, I'm resident in Lebanon, they transmitted it to the investigating judge in France. But the way they obtained this information is more than criticizable. The Nissan employees, the day I was arrested, came to my house in Lebanon, entered the house, took a lot of documents, took a lot of computers. They took computers also from an office that I was using in Lebanon, and they took all these elements and they have given them to the Japanese prosecutor. There is there is an investigation, criminal investigation today in Lebanon about how they get this information, number one. Number two, nobody guaranteed the integrity of this information when it was transmitted from Nissan to the Japanese prosecutor. Nobody can guarantee the integrity of the information when the Japanese prosecutor transmitted this information to the French investigative judge. And we said it many times. We contest that. This is not legal.
Yeah.
Obviously, they passed all of this and they decided to put a warrant on me.
So Renault, largest shareholder, the French government, days away from a presidential election. Do you believe that this move is politically motivated?
I don't know. Frankly, I don't know. I can speculate on that, but frankly, the timing is more than suspicious. You know, why do you want to do it today? Why do it Friday? Why can't you do it Monday? That means this is something which has been lasting for years. All of a sudden,
because it's a bit strange, given the fact that they have put so much concentration, particularly in that last televised debate, on CEO pay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, any observer can, make this kind of deduction. I'm not trying to speculate here. I'm just observing the facts, and I'm saying I'm not surprised by the arrest warrant. It's part of the normal process because of me present in Lebanon, but I'm surprised by the way and the timing.
But if you're looking to be tough on CEOs and tough on CEOs' pay, and I'm talking about Mr. Macron, it seems a bit suspect that 3 days before an election, you would go after.
Yeah, but France is struggling with the problem that has been lasting for many years, okay? You want competitive companies. You want to play a big role in the global economy. And at the same time, you're extremely picky on the pay of the CEOs, particularly when they present you with brilliant results. We have a problem here because the CEO can be hired by an American company, by a Chinese company, by, a British company. If you want to keep it in France, you have to be fair to him. And his market is not the small French market, it's the global market. It's still not accepted in the French system. And unfortunately, there is no political power who has the courage to stand by this and be consistent with the position. Look what's going on today in France with some of the CEOs who had the best results, who are being openly criticized.
Yeah. Given what you're seeing in that political process and your knowledge of the French system, do you believe Marine Le Pen victory would be catastrophic for France?
I did not follow very closely the campaign that took place in France, but I obviously, she moved a lot to the center in a certain way. She put a lot of moderation into many of the proposals, and it looks like the election is going to be tight. If the election is going to be tight, a lot of French people do not consider her anymore as being extreme. That's the consequence that we see when we look at the forecast of what's going to happen Sunday.
Yeah, but is she good for business?
I don't know exactly what's her program for business. I don't know it. I did not examine it, so I don't want to speculate. But people come to power on a program, and then they are brought on reality based on the situation of the country. And then you have to have a majority in the assembly, in the General Assembly. If you don't have a majority there, you cannot govern. So this is to be seen. But it looks like the odds today favor the actual president.
So an international arrest warrant. What is your next step at this point?
Well, my next step, I've been cornered in Lebanon. Frankly, if I have to be cornered in a country, better be Lebanon. That's number one. So I'm very happy here. And if I have to limit myself to a country, it is Lebanon.
In spite of the economic crisis.
Yeah, independently of the economic crisis, independently of the hardship of the country. And frankly, I'm willing to help. And I said it many times, and I'm helping in different ways. I'm helping universities, I'm helping startups, I'm helping NGOs. I'm trying as much as possible to bring a real contribution to relieve some of the suffering and the despair existing in the country. And I believe in the potential of the country. And I said also, if my experience can help people who are being put in power by the Lebanese people, if I can help them with my experience, I will do it. I don't want any political position. I'm not asking from any official role, but just sharing my experience and helping how to do the reforms that are necessary for the country. I'm happy to do it on a pro bono base, as the same way I'm working with the University of Castile.
When you think about this a bit more broadly, Greg Kelly looks like he's going home. Does that make you revise your opinion of the Japanese legal system? Should you have stuck it out?
Greg Kelly was arrested on one charge: complicity in non-declaring a compensation which was not even his, which was never paid and never decided. That's a charge. Frankly, if you examine what is in the dossier of the prosecutor, he should have taken 1 month or 2 months maximum. He stayed 3 years and a half in Japan, 1 month in prison, and 3 years and a half enforced residence in Japan for this. And he was found guilty on something that we had problems to understand. And he returned to the United States, and he's appealing, even though he's in the United States, because he finds it so, and his lawyer finds it so unfair and so unjust. But the most important element that I learned is after he was arrested in November 2019, when he was arrested, he was asked by the prosecutor, they proposed to him a plea bargain on the condition that he make a statement that they have written. He said, no way, because he's an honest man. I know him. He was one of my main lieutenants heading Nissan. I know he's a man of word. He's somebody for whom integrity means something. He refused to say that, knowing that he would bear the consequence of refusing collaborating with them. He was arrested. So I suppose that many other people inside Nissan were offered the same deal. Plea bargain, you said what we want you to say. If not, you're going to join these guys for a very long time for trial and eventually time in prison. So this gives you the light on how it works in Japan. When the prosecutor, they said, which is very strange, the prosecutor said, oh, if we have 99.4% success rate, because we really take a long time before we decide who we want to indict, but when we catch somebody, we're sure he is guilty.
Yeah.
Oh yeah? But this is contrary to all the human rights. You are basically innocent until proven guilty. And second, how about the defense? If you're doing your job and justifying your success rate of 99.4% because you do a great job, which means that the defense doing a lousy job because they win 0.6% of the cases, it doesn't stand. The whole attitude of the Japanese authorities and the legal system in Japan is despicable, in my opinion, because what's dangerous is you go to Japan, you think it's a normal democracy where your rights are going to be respected, and then you discover something hidden which is totally contrary to all the principle and all the treaties that they signed.
So that's a no.
That's a no.
When you think about what happens next, and we talked about political motivation potentially in France, does it surprise you that it seems as if, in the case of Greg Kelly under the Biden administration, they were able to find a way to work with the Japanese and get him home? And that did not happen under President Trump, at least not for you.
Yeah.
Do you think that that has an impact on their justice system?
Look,
who's in the White House?
I am, without any doubt, and an external observer, the fact that finally the U.S. government, through different statements made by the ambassador, Emmanuel Rahm, was saying, you know, I'm going to defend him as he was one of my constituents. I'm going to watch carefully. Before the trial, he said, I will not make comment until I see. He was the first one to congratulate Greg Kelly, even though they were still in the judgment, in the verdict, being after the verdict had been said, you know, welcoming him back to the United States. The U.S. had an influence to get Greg finally back home. I envy him in a certain way, because I didn't witness anything from that, from the French government.
Yeah. You think that has something to do with the relationship with the Chinese?
I don't know. Frankly, I'm not going to speculate like that, but I see that finally the U.S. government put his power and influence. And frankly, there is something that is forgotten in all this story, that the United Nations made a statement very clear, saying my arrest in Japan was arbitrary. They said very clearly that all my human rights have been violated. They asked Japan to make an inquiry about how these things can happen in Japan. They sat down on it. They didn't care. And this thing which should question the approach of the of the French prosecutor. France, which is the country of the human right. France, which is very proud to say, you know, presumption of innocence comes first. You just accept all of this without mentioning anything, without denouncing the violation of human rights, even coming from the United Nations. This is very suspicious.
Yeah. Walk me through the situation that you see Renault in today specifically.
Oh, I'm very sad when I see the situation of Renault today. That means I'm sad because I dedicated more than 13 years of my professional life heading this company, and I was very proud of heading it, even though I was heading also Nissan and Mitsubishi, as you know. And the 13 years, when I was CEO of Renault, Renault, as you know, has been the biggest growth of its history, the best results, financial results of its history, and it culminates in 2017 and 2018 by making the Renault-Nissan-Mitsubishi alliance the #1 automotive group in the world, with about 11 million cars sold, and 450,000 employees, and more than practically 180 to $200 billion of revenue, and 10 to 15 billion dollars of profit. This was a healthy company with a clear vision, with a good coordination between the different company. This was something to be proud of, and I was very proud of this. I could have retired at that moment. Unfortunately, I made the decision to go for another mandate, requested by the French government, requested by the board of Renault, another mandate of 4 years, because they told me, you know, you're the best person to continue this convergence of the lines to make sure that it's not going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what the drama is. 4 months after I've been re-elected as head of Renault unanimously, I am arrested and abandoned.
Yeah.
And abandoned. You know, a former president of the French Republic came to visit me. This was one of the rare politicians who came to visit me when I was in Japan. And he told me, if I was president, I would have sent the prime minister in a plane. He would have stayed in Haneda until he brings you back to France. And if there is something against you from the Japanese, we solve it in France. But this is not the way to treat one of the top executives of France, because when I was visiting Japan, I was also the head of Renault. This is not acceptable. Obviously, it was music to my ear. Unfortunately, he was not the president of France anymore.
Do you believe if President Macron is elected again, that you're going to get a fair trial in his France?
Fortunately, in France, justice is somehow independent of the political power, okay? Which obviously not the case in Japan. So I think, yes, I can get a fair trial. I will not get a fair treatment, but I will get a fair trial. A fair treatment means the media and, I'm facing in a certain way an administration, and I'm facing a company. Because after I was not defended by Renault, Renault has, the present management of Renault had every interest to make me look guilty. You know, we didn't defend him because he was guilty of doing something, okay? What's interesting is it's not consistent, because if I was guilty of all these things, why did you not join at the beginning the charges? You have been brought to the charges by the investigative judge and at the request of the French administration. On top of this, I gave you the case. That means if the big case is the Omani case, explain to me how you continue to work with them, with the same shareholder, the same management, except one, as if nothing happened.
Yeah. Do you think it's a case of Icarus too close to the sun? I mean, they're talking in these press reports about your parties at Versailles. Somebody's very uncomfortable with the lifestyle you were leading.
No, probably. But frankly, it was not my lifestyle. I mean, those who know my lifestyle, it's not at all. They picked 2 or 3 events in 13 years of presidency to highlight an image which is not my image. You know that there is about 140 parties in Versailles every year. You're highlighting one of them made by Renault in a particular year. You manipulate, you're saying, well, this party was for your birthday, where it was not for the birthday, it was for celebrate 14 years of the alliance. I mean, there was so much bad faith in the accusation and so much manipulation of the information is disheartening. And frankly, I wonder why this, you know, in French you use the term acharnement, this heavy hatred, heavy refusal of somebody who frankly has served France for many years in different company in a way which is impeccable.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the macro environment at this point, because there's a lot of concern, obviously, about global energy prices off the back of not just a tight capacity issue that we're seeing in the oil market, but also, of course, the invasion of Ukraine by the Russians. What's your deepest concern when you look at the global economy today?
No, my deepest concern is all of what's happening today going against the normal evolution of humanity, which is globalization. You know, it's sharing, exchanging, elimination little by little of the borders. And we're seeing it, and it's facilitated by technology. It's also facilitated by the mindset of young people who practically, for them, 50% of their life is in fiction, you know, with through the new
the
social media, through the metaverse, which is at the beginning of its evolution. And what I'm seeing today are breaks and hiccups into a movement, in my opinion, which is irreversible. All the people saying the end of globalization, these are the people who say at the same time that the development of artificial intelligence is going to destroy employment, which is totally stupid. When you know that in Northern Europe, in Europe and in North America and in many countries, we lack engineers, we lack technicians, we lack coders, we lack developers. A lot of companies are looking for them in India, in China, in many of the developing countries. There is a huge explosion of employment in some area and destruction of other area. That's exactly what happened every time we are going through a revolution. When we went from an agricultural society to an industrial society, when we went from industrial society to an information society, and now we're moving from an information society to the artificial intelligence society, when objects become not slaves but partners. That means you're going to exchange with them. They're going to help you in your daily life, help you make decisions. That means it's interesting to see how short-sighted people can be, not even examining what happened in history. Not that history is going to indicate the future, but it's a good guide to try to understand what's coming in the future. So I don't think this is the end of globalization. I think we may see some hiccups, some breaks, some problems, some conflicts. And human history has always it has never been linear. You know, it's stop and go. But the direction is very clear.
Do you see Elon Musk then as a visionary?
Oh, without any doubt. That means I met Elon Musk the first time in, at the beginning of the electric car. You know, at that moment we were two people only believing in the electric car. You know, he made the startup. I was the head of Nissan and Renault. He started Tesla, and I was the first one to present with the Leaf in Nissan and Zoe for Renault. We were accused of being fools, it's not going to go anywhere. You know the end of the story. Today, everybody moving to electric car, and if the market today valorizes Tesla as more than $1 trillion, which is probably much more than all the other makers reunited, it's because the market see in Tesla a company moving toward the future without any liability from the past. While all the other car makers are, slowly moving because they have to take in consideration the engineers defending diesel and the engineers defending internal combustion engine and the existing plants and the existing facility. While the other guy moving toward the future without these liabilities, so they are betting on him, not only because he has a vision and he has implemented a lot of things, but also because he has no liability. Yeah. He has no loyalty to the past. While the
so
others,
if you were still sitting in your chair as the head of Renault and Nissan, would you be worried about Elon Musk?
I would not be worried about Elon Musk. I would have tried to emulate him, even knowing that he has a huge advance because he has no liability. I had many liabilities. Because you know that even when I had to go to China, when I made the decision to bring Nissan to China in 2002, I had a huge resistance from a lot of Japanese. They considered that China, intellectual property is not being respected, this is, etc. Not looking at the potential of China. This was already 2002. You imagine the resistance I had in 2008. Because when you decide to dedicate billions of dollars for the electric car, the decision of making electric car doesn't bother anybody. The problem starts because when you decide to dedicate so much resources for the electric car, you need to cut other programs. And this is where the resistance starts. Oh, you're cutting on diesel, we have a problem. You're going to cut on this engine, we have a problem. You're stopping doing this, we have a problem. This is where the resistance comes. he doesn't have this resistance because he has no liability to the past.
Do you see the oil prices as they are today creating a demand destruction that's going to accelerate the move to electric vehicles?
Frankly, I don't believe the oil prices are going to stay at this level. That means they may stay on the short term. I don't think it's going to go because there are plenty of oil, plenty of natural gas available. They are new. But I think the limitation on oil and on natural gas are going to come mainly from the environmental concern. And the environmental concern is going to push towards electric cars. No doubt about it. So obviously we have the fuel cells coming as the next generation of cars. It's possible. But the next 10 to 15 years, without any doubt, is going to see the reign of the electric cars.
So Elon Musk is also trying to take over Twitter. Do you think that would be good for the company?
I have no opinion on that. Frankly, I know. But, Elon is involved in so many company. He has SpaceX and he has Tesla and he has, he has his own word and his own ambition that I respect because he has shown so far that it was successful. And as long as he's successful, people are going to have to recognize that, his vision was grounded. And, okay, so was it a good decision or not? We don't know. Only the future will tell.
So you mentioned globalization. What about the inflation picture that we're seeing today?
Because
we're looking at very different approaches potentially from the United States and from the ECB.
Yeah, but no, it's worrying. It's worrying. But what's a little bit reassuring is the fact when you look at the numbers of inflation, it's mainly driven by energy. It's mainly driven by logistics, transportation. So it's not really core on all the other items which go into the panel of consumption. That's why, in my opinion, yes, there is a surge on the short term. I think everybody's conscious of it. I don't think it will go too far. It may be worrying for 1 or 2 or 3 years. But I think there is much more downside to a surge of inflation than upside. So I bet that at the end of the day, particularly the largest economy will be able to tame it.
Walk me through how you see what's happening in the global order with Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Yeah, well, frankly, it's very sad what's happening there. It's very sad, obviously, for Ukraine. It's very sad also for Russia because the Russian people will bear the consequence of what's happening. And when I see these major industrial companies where we invested so much energy, modernization, technology, like Avtovaz, as you know, the company making the Lada brand, it's sadness because so much work had been done, so much good work had been done, so much support was given by the Russian authority to make all these entities flourish, and now a lot of it is being destroyed. I think Russia will continue to be Russia. It's a large economy, it's a powerful country, it's an influential country. The question is, how long will be this parenthesis lasting?
Right, and then what China's position will be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But, China taking care of their own interests very well, taking care of their own economy very well. They've been doing this for so many years. So I'm not worried about what will happen in China.
Speaking of taking care of their own interests, politics in Lebanon. We've got an election coming up, and there are also big questions about whether or not the particular reforms in terms of the fiscal and financial reforms will actually be put into place to get an IMF deal.
Yeah.
How do you see the political landscape in this country?
Well, in Lebanon, the source of power is the parliament. It's a parliamentary regime. The prime minister may be selected with the majority in the parliament. The president of the republic is elected by the parliament. So the parliament is the source of all powers. So the legislative election coming are extremely important because they're going to define the rapport de force between the different parties. And the only preoccupation I have is when you are in a situation of crisis, like Lebanon is, financial crisis, economic crisis, social crisis, and political crisis, the basic element of any turnaround, of any revival, is the unicity of command. If you don't have unicity of command in a company, if you don't have unicity of command in a city, in anything, particularly when you're in crisis, no matter how goodwill you have, no matter how competent and smart the people are, you're not going to get any results. So the unicity of command is essential. So I think at a certain point in time, this parliament will have the responsibility to try to establish a regime that would ensure the unicity of command. Because without unicity of command, nothing is going to happen. You'll always have somebody saying, I don't agree, I want this modification, and at the end of the day, there is an agreement on the smallest common denominator between the different parties, which is usually insufficient to make a turnaround, because we really need a turnaround in Lebanon.
Is it possible, do you think?
I think it's possible, but it's going to require, possibly, yes, it is possible. Are there solutions? Yes, there are solutions. And personally, I have my own opinion about how to do that. Is it probable? It's a different story. Yeah. Because, again, you need unicity of command, and you need really to dedicate yourself to the financial salvaging of Lebanon and the economic resurrection of Lebanon. And this is something which is going to need a lot of focus, a lot of fortitude, a lot of stubbornness into making the necessary reforms. And if we don't see happening, well, I'm afraid that the results are going to be very disappointing. Disappointing not only for the Lebanese people, but disappointing for all the partners who will be lending the money in a certain way to try to bring the country back to life.
Do you think that there's any hope for external help? And I'm talking about the U.S., the French,
yeah, but
and the Gulf states.
Yes, there is hope, but I think external help will be conditioned by, you need to do your job. If you don't do your job, can't help you. I mean, help cannot be to cover for the insufficiency of the job done in Lebanon. Help can come to support and accelerate the reforms being done in Lebanon. And that's why the position today are very clear. You do the reforms, the necessary reforms, and then money will come, which is totally normal. And frankly, I think the biggest resource of Lebanon today is not so much the IMF or the help of this country or the other country. It's the huge population of Lebanon, which is outside Lebanon. All the 14 or 15 million Lebanese origin or Lebanese people who are spread all over the planet, and who are still, in a big majority of them, linked to the country. They want to come back to their village. They want to come back to their community. They want to be able to invest. Most of them come in summer, spend time. They want to have a house in their village. And these people are the people that we need to mobilize. But these people are not going to come back if they don't trust the banking system, if they don't trust the laws in Lebanon, if they don't trust that in a certain way they're making an investment. But do you trust
the banking system in Lebanon? Yeah. I mean, you've been here. You're a numbers guy.
Well, today,
where's all that money?
Well, today there is nothing. Today, obviously, the banking system is frozen. But you can't make an economy work without a banking system. So we're going to have to establish a banking system. But this is not essential. I think the essential ingredient is trust.
Yeah.
Trust. You need to establish trust. And trust starts with the stabilization of the currency. And it's interesting because you had a lot of protest when the currency were very volatile. For the last months, there have been a systematic intervention from the central bank to stabilize the currency. Yeah. And since then, the protests went down. So the currency has a big impact on people about how confident people are, even on the short term. But they know that it will not last because they are afraid from how solid is this stability, how long we're going to have this stability. So trust is very important. Trust is going to be based on competent decision, few priorities followed systematically by a unified command at the level of the country. If not, unfortunately, we're going to be in this kind of, the French say, sable mouvant for a very long period.
Do you have any confidence in anyone working in the Lebanese government today, whether they be in parliament, sitting in the president's office,
many people.
The central bank governor?
No, frankly, there are many competent people in Lebanon, much more than we think. The only problem today is that the competent people cannot show, for a very simple reason. Every time you propose something, there is somebody to say no. And there is no central command to say, no, we're going to do this, we're not going to do that. We're going to do this, we're not going to do that. And actually doing it. Not saying, we agree on this, but nothing happens because there is opposition here or there. So this central command is important. Look, when I was called to Japan to fix Nissan, and the Japanese called me, why? Because they were desperate. There was no solution. They tried 2 revival plans, they were failures, okay? They asked a foreigner coming from Renault, a company that did not respect at that moment because they want to make the deal with Mercedes, and then Mercedes turned their back because they were making the deal with Chrysler. They ended up somehow with Renault, and somehow with me by saying this is our last chance. Okay? But for them, it was an effort. They were not very proud of this solution. Okay? So my basic condition, I didn't put any condition, is okay, if you want me to fix it, central command. And I accepted central command. And we were able to do something which was considered impossible, do it well, do it for a very long period of time, and build a company that until at least 2017-18 was a company which was a very solid company, a very healthy company. So the basic ingredient was central command.
Yeah.
One single authority, a plan, a vision, a lot of discussion, a lot of communication, association of the people, but at the end of the day, only one decision making.
Yeah. Is there a possibility in your view that Lebanon gets to that point? Because many would say that this is Lebanon's last chance.
Yeah, well, is it possible? Yes, is it possible? Is it probable? This is where a lot of people have doubts. Personally, I have a little bit of doubt because, you know, Lebanese people are by nature creative, individualist, fun-loving, life-loving. And frankly, when they're not happy in Lebanon, they have a tendency to emigrate. They don't face the problems in Lebanon. They just say, okay, I'm not happy here, I'm going to go. I'm going to go to Canada, United States, to France, etc. I'm going to do another work, another job. Today, these possibilities don't exist anymore. A visa for young people to emigrate.
Very difficult.
Very difficult. So people we have to face our problems. We can't escape our problems with the massive immigration. So frankly, I think the conditions are reunited. This condition has never existed in the last 100 years to force us to look at the problems, bring a solution, and bring this central command which is necessary. Because if not, I mean, 70% of the population today is under the level of poverty. This happened in 3 years. I mean, some countries are very poor, but they've been poor for such a long time. So there is a kind of accommodation to poverty. Not in Lebanon. Lebanon has been a relatively prosperous country for a lot of years. And this sudden reduction in the way of life happened so brutally that people are still stunned by it. Little by little, they are realizing that if we don't take care of our problems ourselves, we cannot rely only on outside help. We have to fix our problem ourselves. Nothing's going to happen.
Do you think you're ever going to get your life back?
Well, I'm fighting for it. Yeah, I mean, I'm fighting for it. I'm determined to do it. I'm not determined to do it by revenge, because I turned the page. But I'm fighting for it because I hate injustice. And fundamentally, I am convinced I've been treated so unfairly and in a way which is totally contrary to justice. And also, I'm fighting also for the people I love, you know, who somehow will be living with my reputation in the future. So I'm fighting for my reputation. You know, what I've done in my life, and particularly in my professional life, is something they should be proud of and not should be ashamed of. And this will mainly be based on how I reestablish the truth on everything which has been said. You know, when I was arrested, what shocked me the most is the fact that the Japanese authority never allowed me to talk to the press. Never. You know that when I got bailed out the first time and I was preparing for a press conference, I was re-arrested 3 days before my press conference. When I was bailed out the second time, the Japanese press asked the chief prosecutor, why don't you let Carlos Ghosn talk to the media? He said, no, he's free to talk to the media. And we are free to bring new charges. So the message was very clear. So while I was staying in Japan, I couldn't talk to the press. They thought, frankly, that I'm going to stay there forever, that my trial will take 10, 15 years, because if Greg Kelly on one charge, it took 3 years and a half, you can imagine for me how many years of trial I would have. Plus, as he was not even found innocent on something which was obvious, they would have found something to make me guilty, which means I would have died in Japan without being able even to open my mouth. Nobody had any hint that I could leave Japan by myself. And that's what I've done, which was a complete surprise and changed completely the rules of the game, because now I was able to fight, to talk, to write books, to make movies, and also to try to establish the facts, to fight this fundamental injustice which was done.
Carlos, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining CNBC today.
Thank you.